Project Zomboid is a hardcore zombie survival game, in which you must fight against almost every aspect of the game. Between fighting off starvation, keeping away depression, not to mention there's zombies. So yeah, learning to survive is a tough mountain to overcome, but it's not impossible. In this video, I'm going to take you through the basic tips and tricks to make surviving just that little bit easier. This is the very first episode of making hard games easier. Now, this can seem unimportant, as it's a step that has to be overcome before you even load up the world. Zomboid is a very difficult game that does not hold your hand in the slightest. You're thrust into this harsh environment with nothing but a, "this is how you died." Not ideal, I know. You can't approach this game thinking that it's all going to be sunshine and rainbows. You're not going to be good at the game when you load in. You're going to die. A lot. This can be especially frustrating when paired with not knowing what's happening. Don't fret. This is normal and expected. Just take each death as a lesson and learn from it. This is probably the hardest part about getting into the game, so once you overcome this, it's all downhill from here. Now, let's start creating our world. So, before designing your world settings, you'll be greeted with 4 towns: Muldraugh, Riverside, Rosewood, and West Point. They each have their own upsides and downsides, but I will forever recommend that people start their journey in Rosewood. You'll notice this is where I personally spawn in every one of my playthroughs, even if I'm moving to another town later on. Rosewood is the most beginner-friendly of the areas. It has a lot of good supplies, a relatively low zombie population. Feel free to spawn wherever you like, but don't say I didn't warn you. So now that we've reached inner peace with almost certain death, we can move on towards creating our world. This is where things may get a little controversial, and this will be a common theme in this series, but I think it's perfectly acceptable for people to make the game easier on themselves in the beginning. Want to turn zombies to a minimum until you can actually survive? Perfectly okay. Don't want to get mauled before you even know how to open your inventory? Amazing. All that I ask is that when you feel ready, you progress onto harder and harder difficulties until you're playing the game as intended. With a game that has such a steep learning curve, taking that step back to actually learn the basics is something I'm not going to look down on. The option was given to you for a reason. Here on screen, you'll see a plethora of options. The main thing you want to focus on for now is the population and the loot rarity tabs. Making supplies more abundant while making enemies less so? While it's not something I'd suggest for a long-term run, it's definitely an option to get your feet wet. When you've gone through and programmed the world to your liking, it's on to a mildly more in-depth customization. When designing your character, you'll get a long list of occupations and an even longer list of traits. You'll see right away that there are good traits and bad traits with points next to them. Here starts the balancing act. If you want a good trait, it has to come with a bad trait. This may seem complicated in the beginning, but there are quite a few bad traits that have little to no downsides. Take for instance high thirst. This may seem like a poor option to take since water should be a commodity. But for a while, it's pretty much free. Every sink and every other such water source will keep you hydrated with 2 simple clicks. You may be visiting the sinks more often, but I've never died of dehydration, so take that as you will. Now, I'm going to rapid fire the bad traits that I will always take and a very brief reasoning why. Thin skin because you shouldn't be getting cut anyway. Slow healer because you shouldn't be getting cut anyway. Underweight because there's a lot of food available in the early game so you can just get right up to a healthy weight right off the bat by eating ice cream, butter, and other such things. Prone to illness, being sick is either certain death or cake. Smoker, there are cigarettes and lighters literally everywhere. Short-sighted, you can spawn with glasses. And slow reader, you can speed up time. And now we move on to the good traits. These really depend on your playstyle and what you're hoping to achieve, but no matter the build, I will always say that keen hearing is a lock. For a little context, when you're bitten, it's certain death. There is no cure, there is no hope, you just die. Now a way to get bit 99% of the time you're attacked is being attacked from behind. So what can we do? With keen hearing, you get a decently sized cone of vision behind you, allowing you to see a threat that you might have missed otherwise and turn around just in time to save yourself. This is the single most useful trait in my opinion. For the rest of the traits, my personal choices are on screen, but you choose whatever you feel will fit your playstyle best. After all, most of the learning in this game is trial and error. So after the cheerful messages of your impending doom have passed, you'll be thrown into the world. Other tutorial videos tell you to crouch immediately, shut every blind you come across, if you make any noise you're dead. I think this is absolutely garbage. While I don't suggest throwing every plate you find on the floor and just throwing a house party, I also don't think tiptoeing around is your best course of action. Just take a casual stroll around the house, collecting basic supplies and getting ready to get a move on. The goal right now is to find a place to set up shack, to which I suggest the Rosewood Fire Station. The fire station is a wonderful place to loot regardless. You'll find tons of axes, scratch-resistant clothing, medical supplies, food, a ton of storage, beds. Essentially everything you would need in a base it has, and due to its central location in the town, I see no better option to at least set up a temporary base. Until you can find something more long-term with a better source of food, this is a great option. A good resource to go base scouting is the Project Zomboid map project. Punching that into Google will net you this, and essentially it's an interactive map that'll let you explore the map of Project Zomboid and let you find that perfect base without the hassle of trying to explore on foot and potentially find it. With the base of your dreams in mind, you may notice that the UI is just a bit funky. The box on the far right is the loot that is in the environment around you. The different tabs represent whether it's on the floor, or if it's in a container that's near you. The box next to it is your inventory. The same concept applies. The box is what you have on hand, and if you have some sort of bag equip, it'll pop up here as well. Now, in the early game, getting a bag is very paramount, as it'll have weight reduction applied to anything inside of it, which allows you to haul more loot. Now, the third and final box you see on my screen is the health menu. I like keeping this on so I can peek at my character's well-being at a moment's notice. In the top right of all these boxes, you can choose to have these boxes always on, or to only pop up whenever your mouse goes over them. So if they become stuck open and they're blocking your screen, try clicking on these icons to get them to minimize. So, while you're stuffing your gremlin pockets with loot, you manage to attract the attention of a handful of zombies. Time to lay down and die, right? Wrong. While it may seem scary at first, you'll notice that the zombies are very slow. Don't sprint away, this will cause your character to get exhausted and lose almost all combat capabilities. Calmly walk away from them. You'll slowly gain distance, and here comes the fun part. You'll need to break line of sight with the zombies. Once the zombies can no longer see you, they will go to the spot in which they last saw you. So if you break line of sight and cut off, just basically hiding from them, the zombies will forget about you and move on like it never happened. Be sure not to make too much noise as you do this, otherwise they'll just go to the point where they last heard you and potentially see you again. But what happens if you don't want to run? You found an axe and you want to do some real damage. Well, my friend, combat is an option. Hold your weapon of choice in your hand and hold right click. This will cause your character to prepare an attack. Left clicking from here will cause your character to swing, bringing doom to any zomboid unlucky enough to be in your sights. Looking at this footage, you may notice that the zomboids glow green whenever they're within range. If you want to be able to do this, go into your settings and display. Under cursor, you'll want to change your aim outline to any weapon. Having this option on will guarantee that you know when you can and cannot hit the zomboid in front of you. Now when it comes to fighting in Project Zomboid, distance management is your best friend. It only takes one scratch to end your run and rinse all your character's progress down the drain. Fighting zombies is kind of like working with electricity. You can't be scared of it, or you'll get nothing done. Once you gain a healthy respect for fighting zomboids, you can do some real damage. And honestly, you don't even need a weapon to be lethal. This should only be really used as a last resort, as it tears up your boots and is a whole lot riskier than trying to fight with a weapon. But holding right click to have your character get ready, and pressing space will have them push. So once you push a zombie, they have a chance to fall over. Now position yourself slightly below their head and press space again to stomp. Keep this up until they stop moving. Fun fact, when you're standing on the Zomboids, they can't get up. Use this to immobilize one while you do with another. In short, combat in this game is very possible, very fun, but also very dangerous. Learn your combat range, and you'll become a force to be reckoned with. So now that we've covered the bare minimum, and keep in mind this was just the bare minimum, you should be good to survive your first day. This is a big step, and we'll be sure making it through the first few nights is more than just dumb luck of not being eaten. Next video, we'll be covering the skills, the TV shows, and changing your view to a more long-term survival. If you have any questions about the game, feel free to leave a comment or hop into the community Discord. I absolutely love this game and have no problem taking time out of my day to help someone learn to love this game too. With that being said, like the video, subscribe, all that nonsense, and I'll be back next video. Peace.